Welcome to the latest edition of Mob Talk Sit Down. I'm Dave Schratwieser.
And I'm George Anastasia.
George, lots to talk about this week. The government shutdown, is that having an effect on indictments? Joey Merlino in jail now, his second and third month kind of here. How's he doing? And some other interesting organized crime news in South Philly.
Absolutely, a lot going on, and it's all about resources when it comes to the FBI.
George, let's start with mob boss Joey Merlino now going into his second month in federal prison. From what I hear, not happy with the accommodations down there, but dealing with it like he always does.
Yeah, I think Joey's used to this kind of stuff, and he's very good at that. I think, the other thing that hangs over his head is he going to get credit for those 4 months he spent in jail on that probation violation way back? If he gets that, that's going to ease the whole situation for him, I think.
Yeah, he could be out a lot quicker that
Absolutely,
way, maybe in less than another year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the street, kind of one of the things bouncing around right now is what, if any, murders are they going to include in these indictments? I'm hearing at least 2, and the 2 they want to put in, we're not going to get too specific about, but the 2 they want to put in kind of bring everybody in the hierarchy into the picture.
Yeah, that would be the purpose. And we've said this all along. If they're going to come with a RICO, it's going to include a murder, and it's going to include a murder or 2 that they think they can prove. And what they want to do is, the RICO's the umbrella. You get everybody underneath that umbrella. And there are a couple murders out there that if you start ticking off names, people involvement, you can put a lot of people in there. I think that's where they hope to go. Again, we're not there yet, but there's more and more talk that they're going to do this.
All right, and the lead FBI agent in this came from New York, helped take down the hierarchy of the Bonanno crime family, built that case in a rather interesting way. We kind of see some similarities going on here in Philadelphia there.
Yeah, I mean, usually a case is from the bottom up. That particular case seemed to come from the top down. And if you can get somebody at the higher level who's cooperating, they can give you a lot of information and put a lot of people in a case. I think that's one of the strategies here. Again, we're waiting to see what happens, but there's still a lot of talk, and it looks like this thing is not going to go away. So I think we're going to see something eventually.
Must be tough to sit in jail here if you're some of the guys who are sitting in jail, including Merlino, wondering what's coming next or what's going to be next.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another card that the feds can play. You've got a couple guys who are doing time from the conviction 4 or 5 years ago. They're getting ready now. They think, oh, I got another year, I'm coming home. Another year and a half, I'm coming home. All of a sudden, somebody shows up and says, you think you're coming home, but here's a new indictment. You're not going home. Very, very frustrating.
Gives you some things to think about.
Well, yeah, I mean,
whether you want to cooperate, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. That's one of the tools that used to get a guy to flip. I mean, I don't want to do any more time. I'm done. What do you need? That kind of thing.
And some of the guys who've been home, I kind of know for a fact from talking to other guys that they definitely do not want to go back for a long sentence, like a 10, 15-year bid.
Well, I mean, a lot of these guys now are in the 50s and 60s. And another 15-year bid, that's the rest of their lives. So yeah, the stakes are much higher this time if they come with a serious RICO.
All right, George, another federal related kind of thing here to this whole situation in Philadelphia is this drug case out of South Jersey. 4 guys are sitting in jail right now, and almost a year coming up in March since they were arrested. Right. No bail, 3 of the 4. And it's kind of sitting there. We don't know where it's going. You've been doing some homework on this.
Yeah, it's Joe Servideo, Salvatore Piccolo, and 2 other guys. That case, never been an indictment yet. I mean, they've been arrested. Nobody's been indicted. And 5 different kind of continuances, don't start the clock yet. Usually indication that there's a deal being worked out, they're going to plead out. And we're hearing they're going to plead out, but it hasn't happened yet. And as you say, we're coming up on almost a year now. Something else may be going on there. There's always been talk that the other people are going to be put in that case. That hasn't happened. It's a serious drug case built around tapes. And Servideo himself on one of the tapes says, you can't get around tapes. It's your words. And in essence, you bury yourself. If that case ever goes to trial, I think we're going to see even more tapes. But that's one of these things that it's hanging over everybody's head. Is it only going to be those 4 guys, or more people going to be put in that case?
Somebody higher up in the organization.
Right, and there's indications there was a capo who may have approved all of this. If that's the case, you can legitimately put him in. I don't know where that's going. It's just curious to me that it's been almost a year. Nothing's been resolved. Usually by now, either we have an indictment and gone to trial, or, all right, we're going to plead to an information and the story. And we've been hearing all along, they're ready to plead to 10 years. Hasn't happened. Yeah,
I mean, and the question is, even they're granting all these continuances, the defense, but we don't have anything. Coming up in March is the 1-year anniversary right there. And there are some indications of at least threats of violence. 2 guys sitting outside a guy's house with a gun, waiting for him to come home to shoot, allegedly. That's on tape. There's some discussions on tape about that. That's a problem when you go to court.
This is a serious case for these guys if it went to trial. I think the evidence is strong, the tapes are strong. I think the one thing, thinking psychologically, these guys, the three of the guys that are in jail, I mean, they're building up time against whatever they get sentenced. You get sentenced to 10 years, you already got a year in. Maybe you look at it that way, so you keep granting discontinuances. But I think it's unusual that it's gone this long without any more movement since the arrests.
All right, we'll see if we get that resolved. If there's any deals in that case, in 10 years is what we hear they're talking about. They'll plead to like a 10-year, I think, if they decide to go that route. But they don't want anything going above that, and the threats of violence probably would drive it up higher.
Yeah, and I think they want guarantees that there's no other charges coming.
Absolutely.
That's the other part of this.
Yeah. George, let's stick with the drug theme for a second. Joseph Massimino Jr., who got caught up in a big drug situation 18 months ago or so, in which 2 people died from drugs that they allegedly got from him, has now pled guilty in early December to those charges. Got some interesting jail sentence here, and he's still kind of hanging around Philadelphia in the federal detention center.
Yeah, it was combination federal and the city cases. And what was he looking at? 15, 16 years. Yeah. And going in, a lot of people thought it might even be more than that because it was one of the first cases where they're bringing that charge that you sold the drugs resulting in a death, ergo you're responsible for the death. Yeah. So you've got that situation, and you got his dad, Mousy, in town fighting his conviction, ineffective counsel.
Also in the federal detention center.
So it's father and son kind of sitting in there. What does it mean? I don't know. I mean, again, bureaucracy moves slowly. Maybe it's just a question of hasn't been processed out yet. It just bears watching because they're 2 prominent names. And again, Massimino, the one-time underboss, figures into a lot of the other stuff we were talking about earlier.
Some of the guys on the street raise questions about this sentence because the dealing drugs resulting in a death could be 40 years.
Yeah.
And he didn't get 40, he got like 15, and he basically worked out a deal in federal court for the drugs and some guns he had in the house, and he worked out a deal with the city prosecutors, and they run concurrently.
Yeah, and going in, the indication was this is going to be kind of the poster boy case for this, and he's going to get hammered. 15 years is no light sentence, but he didn't get what he could have gotten. So people are wondering about all of that. The DA was going to be strong on this, and this was his first chance to do something, and from at least the law and order perspective, he didn't really deliver.
All right, let's also go back now a little bit. We want to revisit Atlantic City a little bit, and a case down there and that involved the Pagans. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was Freddie Ogello, the one-time leader of the Pagans in K-Mac County, was convicted of the contract murder of April Kaufman, the wife of Dr. James Kaufman, guilty of hiring a hitman to kill her, also guilty of plotting to kill the doctor, who subsequently committed suicide in prison. So it's a case that looks like it's resolved, but there's still a lot of questions kind of laying over top of all of that. And it was, interestingly, there was testimony that Ogello at different times sought mob help, one to have the wife killed, and then to have the doctor killed. Both times, whoever the mobsters were he talked to decided he was making them an offer they could refuse.
And he was guilty, and he got a big sentence.
He got 30 years and continues to deny he had any involvement in it. Fascinating case, typical Atlantic County kind of case. It's a soap opera. And it bears watching. I think there are going to be appeals, and those kind of things never go away.
Such an interesting case that you're working on a book on it.
Yeah, Ralph Recipriano and I are putting together a book, The Pill Mill Murder. There's a lot there. As I said, it's a soap opera.
And the pill mill thing is not a new thing with the Pagans. They've been involved in some other cases in Philadelphia.
They had a really big case here in Philadelphia. That pill mill operation down there was a little bit smaller, but it's the same principle. You got a doctor writing dirty scripts. They're cashing them in, selling the pills on the street. Dr. Kaufman, who killed himself, was supposedly writing the scripts, and the Pagans and their associates were cashing them in and selling OxyContin on the streets of Atlantic County.
Fascinating story.
Yeah, absolutely.
More to come.
Absolutely.
Courtesy of George Anastasia.
There you go.
And the guys. All right, George, let's finish with something interesting out of New York on a hit in a McDonald's drive-up line of an organized crime figure. The feds go back investigating in the case, and they find a GPS tracking device on the car. Interesting little...
Yeah, the hitmen were using the device to track the target, and after the hit, the feds used the GPS device to track the shooters. High tech.
High tech all the way, and check your car.
Absolutely.
See you next time.